with that. Like,
man, we need it, but sometimes we need that we need the human element. We need that comic relief. We need, and I think if, and I don't, and I was speaking a lot of social emotional learning for students, but then when we start talking about wellness, mental wellness, and health for our teachers and our administrators and our stakeholders, man, like this is hard because, normally, if we have a PD, you have somebody providing coffee for you and maybe some bagels with whatever kind of cream cheese, right? And some fruit, right? And now when you have PD, you're going straight in, and guess what? You have another Zoom meeting right after that, or another learning opportunity right after that. And so there's a lot of mental fatigue that our educators and stakeholders are having right now, and it's impacting the response to the work, and it's impacting the empathy to the work because you have some teachers who are like, I don't care what your life situation is. I saw you on your screen and you showed half your face, so I'm going to give you half the credit for today.
Okay.
That you get what I'm saying?
No, I get you.
And that's not in a normal circumstance. The teacher may not have responded that way because they had the tools and the freedom and the access or the releases to get that stress off. They're holding on to the stress and they're passing it on to the kid through their grade.
I'm gonna be like my screen froze, so I'm gonna get a cardboard cutout of myself.
I got bad Wi-Fi.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but no, I mean it's very good that to hear you guys' perspective, both Cam and cousin Earl, to talk about the students and the mental wellness. But let's keep it real. What are you guys doing to keep y'all stress levels down? What are you encouraging? Maybe your faculty, your co-workers and stuff like that. What are you personally doing to manage all of this? Cam, we'll start with you.
You know what, Drew? I have personally witnessed my colleagues, my peers unravel the last, I would say 3 or 4 weeks. This distance learning fatigue, it's real. It's real. And so, I'm pretty good at gauging where I'm at all times and keeping myself in the middle, not getting too high, not getting too low. But for me, and I'm not saying this for the sake of the show, but I like challenges, right? And I pride myself on having pretty strong, critical thinking skills and problem solving skills. I don't think I'd be where I'm at in life if I wasn't inspired by challenges, and that mindset just transferred over to this new reality. I'm not kidding. When we're sitting in meetings and professional development, I am so glued to what's being taught and shared and conveyed. And I'm 18 years in, but I'm paying attention with the fervor of somebody who's first day on the job with that level of intensity. I'm literally glued, writing everything down. And then when the meeting is over, I'm interacting with my notes and internalizing it and asking myself, well, what does this mean for me in my practice? So for me, thriving off challenges, this is, I'm ashamed to say, this has almost been a good thing for me in my career. One of my earlier mentors taught me hey, if there's a problem, there's a solution. You just haven't figured it out yet.
Right.
So I've adopted that ethos, in regards to addressing my stress and the challenges of distance learning. And I think now, and Earl, I'd love to hear what you think about this, but I think now more than ever, it's become more critical to embody a growth mindset.
Yes.
Because problems and obstacles, they're not going to get resolved without it. Yeah. It's almost, you can't have a fixed mindset anymore. If you got away with it this long, those days are over. Yeah. We have to embody that growth mindset.
Yep.
Does that come with a raise or anything? do you guys get any PTO or something?
No, you salary, bro. You salary, bro.
Piggybacking on Brother Cam, man, I'm going to say that the growth mindset, absolutely. For myself, I take on the Herm Edwards, persona every day that I go to work. You play to win the game. Hello, right? You take on that attitude. I've always had that attitude. So I play to win, but I also realize that I can't win without my team. So in order for my team to be well, I have to take care of myself. So I'm a part of men's groups, and shout out to my men's group. I don't want to drop their name, but a solid men's group that I'm a part of. I picked up working out again. I bought me a Nordic Track bike, and I love it. There has to be a release, and of course, sex. But I mean, outside of that, sorry, but I mean, the reality is that you can't create a healthy situation not being healthy, right? And you can't go into a room preaching health to people and you're not taking care of your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being.
Because it's a whole concept.
It's a whole concept.
It's not a partial.
How many
thing.
times have I called you, Drew, just to have a conversation?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And you calling me for the same thing. Like the human element, again, I'm just going to go right back to it. It can't be lost when we talk about education. And unfortunately, in a lot of instances, people are removing the human element as if it doesn't matter, but it does. Technology is great, but we need that human element and we need that growth mindset. And we can't have a growth mindset without taking care of ourselves as educational leaders or educators, because we have a whole nother generation that we're trying to teach and tutor or coach up to taking over when we're done. Okay,
understandable. Any you guys want to chime in before I hop into the next question?
No.
You good? Charlie, you good? I mean, I'm sorry. I gave your government name. I'm sorry. His name is Smith, CEO. I'm sorry. My bad. So like, and once again, I like to, direct this to both of our educators, our guest educators on the show today. So like, in your observation, like, what is the conversation between you and your colleagues? Is, obviously we have to adapt and we have to overcome. But with the adaptation, you come with new ways of getting the message across and new ways of learning. So are people like, hey, when all of this is said and done and the dust settles, are we sticking with this? Are we going to go back and revert to our old ways? What is the conversations like between you and your colleagues? And we'll start with Big Cuz Earl.
Oh, man, the conversation is we got to get out of Sodom and Gomorrah. For sure. Like, we got to get out of there. Like, and we can't go back. Don't look back. You turn to a pillar of salt. Like, we can't go back. I think the state is mandating a lot of things that they expected of us pre-COVID. But I also see that there's some pushback from people who have boots on the ground, who are saying, you know what, that's unreasonable. Can we look at another way of assessing this? Can we figure out another way to collect this data to serve the populations that don't get represented as well, right? So there's certain schools in the Bay Area that are open, right? And it's because of their access to wealth, right? And then everybody else is just, right. And everybody else is distant learning. Well, you know what? That's cold. That's wrong, because like now these students are getting access that other people aren't getting, but it's because of where they live or how much money their families make. But it was the same thing with art prior to COVID, right? Inner city, art is taken out. We're gonna focus on math and English and science, and we're gonna take these CSTs and these high school exit exams or whatever, and we're gonna prep the kids on that. And we're gonna take away the creativity, right?
Right.
Well, when you took away the creativity in schools in the inner city, you created monsters in the city, right? Where you allow art to continue to be maintained in, the suburbs. And so what we're talking about is the difference, I think me and Nesto had a conversation around equity and what that looks like. It's not equality, because if we give everybody the same thing, we're gonna have the same gaps. But if we start to give the people who need, access, let's give them access. And, let's see if things play out the way that they're supposed to.
For sure. Cam, what you got?
Do me a favor, repeat that question. You kind of phased out for a minute.
Okay, so like the conversations with your colleagues.
Okay.
We're in something new, something that has never occurred before in our history, in American history. Yeah. So obviously there's adapt and you have to overcome. So eventually at some point in time, the dust is going to settle and there will be a sense of normalcy. So with that being said, are you and your colleagues, or maybe just your colleagues, are they expressing that, hey, this is a new way of going things, or are we going to revert back to our traditional ways as far as learning models and teaching students and engaging students?
That's complicated. I'm going to say it depends on who you ask, right? Because there's a spectrum of experiences, right? I think there's definitely like a spirit or a climate of ambivalence. A person's response, like the conversations that I'm having, they're determined by a multitude of factors. For example, experience, right? New teacher versus experienced teacher. If you're a new teacher, your credential program didn't prepare you for this. Mm-hmm. And even if you're an experienced teacher, those tricks of the trade, they might not be as effective. I heard CEO say that his son is in first grade and the teacher does a pretty good job of keeping the kids engaged, right? But we can't manipulate the environment, the setting anymore, right? So that's one factor. Family support with grade level children. The duality of having to be an educator and parent at the same time. That's another conversation, right? You're trying to teach, but you're also trying to support your kids and through their distance learning. So that's another conversation. Mindset too. A lot of the conversations are driven by mindset, going back to that growth versus fixed mindset. Some of my colleagues, they prefer this model because it allows them to work from home while, simultaneously taking care of their family and kids. Some of my colleagues don't see this as an effective and sustainable model, and they can't wait for us to reopen the doors. Some of my colleagues who have a growth mindset and who are a big part of the conversations revolving around how we can make this as comprehensive of an experience as possible until we return. And then you have some who have expressed like a desire to continue like working through this model indefinitely. So like I said, going back to the first question you asked me, managing my vertical and horizontal relationships, I'm trying to have conversations with everybody. And all that does is strengthen my empathic ability. But the conversations, like it literally, I'll get off the phone with one person and it's, I'm figuring this out. Things are getting better. And the next conversation, people are crying, and I'm not even exaggerating. People are in tears.
And have you experienced people? Have you experienced people who are reluctant to ask for help?
Oh yeah, and it's funny too because to me, like this experience has nullified experience. We've all been reduced to that of a beginning teacher, right? Yeah. So we're all starting from the same starting point. And so like to me, my experience, again, it's been nullified. Like I don't have an advantage over a first or second year teacher. Yeah. And so if you embody that growth mindset, you use this opportunity just to start from scratch, right? If you're so used to winning championships, you don't make the playoffs the next season. Right. You start from scratch. You figure this out. So like for me, there's no shame when I'm sitting in meetings and professional developments. If I don't understand, I don't know. I just don't have that type of ego. But yeah. This is kind of reset the clocks.
Okay, I think GQ Nesta wanted to chime in.
So I got a little curveball for both of you guys. Okay, so prior to COVID, we had a lot of you touched a lot about wealthy families, right? A lot of wealthy families were paying for SATs, and get into all these elite schools and all that, right? So now with COVID, there's some universities that I've heard, correct me if I'm wrong, but they eliminated the SATs. So now without an SAT, right? How worthy do you see these children, deserving to go to a certain school or elite school? Does that make any difference? With that test?
It does. So this is something that I'm paying attention to now because I think what will be interesting to see is, if any, the residual effect this will have on student learning moving forward, yes. Right? Unfortunately, we may not find this out. We may not find out how removing kids from school will impact them for years to come. We just may not know, yeah. Right? But because we're so preoccupied with COVID that we haven't considered the implications of this model. Like, are our high school graduates going to be more prepared to enter college, for those of them who are graduating through distance learning, right? So to add to that, in my region, we've already had some schools already cancel the remainder of the school year as far as going back physically, and they're going to continue doing this virtually, right? So let's rewind a little bit. This, we closed the schools down on March 13th. So if you don't go back to school, if the last time you sat in a classroom for 6, 7, or 8 hours a day was March 13th, and if you don't go back until August of 2021, going back to skill regression and skill recoupment, like, what is the residual effect going to be about this moving forward? And so I'd really love to hear what Cousin Earl has to say about this.
Man, listen, so I'm having results right away. So I had, the population that I serve, 100% of our students are expelled or adjudicated or, deemed at promise, right? That means that they had negative interactions with school. And once we get them back on track to graduating and going back to their respective districts of residence, they're pretty much ready to go. They're ready to graduate. I have a student right now who we sent her to school on track. We sent her to a district on track to graduate. She is currently not on track to graduate. She's focusing on her music career. That's where we are. This is real time, right? And I literally just got this information yesterday. So the implications, particularly for this population, I think are even more dire than for a student who has a family in a comprehensive setting. But if they are in the same situation, right, it can really set our students back in a horrible way. And I think this is where, again, we have the human element. And as schools, we realize that we can't do it all by ourselves, that we have to reach out to community-based organizations and partners. We have to reach out to people who are willing to dig in the trenches with us. We have to make partnerships with industry, right, and have industry partners so that we can build skills that are transferable from the school to a job, right, or to a career. Because otherwise, it doesn't make sense to a student who's sitting in front of a screen, and again, personality not translating over the screen. Because the teacher may not be as dynamic of an entertainer as, Watts Homie Quan on his Instagram.
Right. Understandable. Smith CEO, I think you had something. Did you have something?
No, I was just gonna say,
shout out Watts Homie Quan.
You guys all brought a good point. I'm in a different situation. You heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, right? I'm spoiled. My kid's in second grade, and education is important to both my wife and I, so we're really on top of it. So I can only imagine the stress level it has on the students, whose parents either can't be there or they're just not there because they don't care. I'm sure not all parents can be home because of work. I mean, a lot of us work from home. A lot of us don't work from home right now. So, I mean, I can only imagine the toll it's going to have on the student. Like Cameron was saying, in the long run, when they finally do go back to school, how far are they going to be set back? What kind of the long-term effect is going to be. It's going to be interesting to see how this all unfolds.
I'm looking in here. Go ahead. I'm gonna reduce it to simple terms too. It's not even just the academics; it's the readiness skills that our kids are going to be, behind in, sitting in a desk for an hour, right? Transitioning, right? We're creatures of habit, and that habit has been removed, and so those skills are going to have to be retaught before we even get back into the, the academics. And so I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Right, because I am steadfast in regards to being open-minded. I know right now students, parents, and many educators probably aren't a big fan of distance learning, but I'm gonna remain positive. There's just not enough data to say if this is the effective model or not. Anecdotally, I think students probably receive a more comprehensive experience in a traditional setting. But it isn't appropriate, I don't think, to compare a model that we've implemented for the last 9 months to a system that was in place for generations.
Okay.
There's just not enough data.
Okay,
There's not
okay,
enough data.
okay. For the sake of time, right? We probably gonna have to revisit this in the part 2. All right. But before we go, I got one final question I would like to ask both our guest educators. So, I know that being a educator, how important the human element is, right? And with everything being primarily virtually based, how are you ensuring that your students receive the same impact as they would if they were in person? What are your tips to the trade? What are you using in your toolbox, to make sure that, all right, maybe you won't be able to, obviously you probably won't be able to match it. You know what I'm saying? It may not, obviously it's not going to be identical, but just maybe tricks of the trades, and maybe somebody listening who's also in your field, that maybe it's something they want to try.
As an administrator, I think I make more phone calls to families personally than I have my entire career as an administrator and as a teacher, because we can't skip over anybody. We got to go down the whole entire list. That's different for me because I prioritize my students over meetings, but I'm mandated to be in meetings, and I come to meetings often late or too early.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, it may not seem like a big thing, but people want to be recognized as people. And I think the fact that we're reaching out, and again, I'm using the support of our community-based partners, our paraprofessionals, our teachers, everybody's digging in together. So we're building this idea that we're in this together. And Cam hit it on the nose, the growth mindset, that this is going to pay off in some form or fashion, whether it's through us bumping our heads and making a lot of mistakes, or through us having some successes and, recreating those successes. I think that's the trick to the trade for me and my sites.
All right. Cam, what you got?
For me, I've always been fascinated and intrigued with interpersonal relationships, right? And because this pandemic has reduced the opportunities for human interaction, I'm trying to create spaces for people, spaces for our parents and our students to check in. Sometimes I table the academics and let's focus on you, the individual. How are you doing? Do you need anything? How's the family? And we can just spend the time talking about that, right? Our most recent election, what did it reveal? It revealed and brought more awareness to this dichotomy in values and some of the social and educational inequities that this nation is burdened by. And Cousin Earl touched upon that. Culture, socioeconomic status, level of education, so forth, right? But at this time, everybody's health and safety is more important than all of that. And I'm just trying to do my best to stay connected to my students, my families, make myself available as a resource for information, programs like necessities, whether that means dropping off toilet tissue, delivering individual learning materials to my families who don't have, equal access to the internet, dropping off a cake to all of my students on their birthday. I'm just trying to keep that connection alive. Before you get into this field, and I know Cousin Earl will agree, I believe empathy and compassion, those are the two prerequisite skills needed, to help students. And right now, there's no better time to manifest those abilities than right now.
All right. And like we do at the end of every show, we always open up the floor to all our guests and, of course, our hosts and our co-hosts. All right. So this evening, we'll start with you, Smith, CEO. Anything you want to share with our listeners?
Just from all the listeners out there, all the parents, I want to say thank you to both you, Earl, and to you, Cameron. I think all of us as parents realize with this pandemic how important education is, how important school is. A lot of us gotten so accustomed just to dropping off our kids 6 to 8 hours a day, and that's 6 to 8 hours that we don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
And this changed all of that, So I think that extra thank you to all educators out there. Excuse me. Thank you for all that you guys do. We don't necessarily see all the behind the scenes work that you guys do, all the extra hours you guys put in. And with this distance learning, we're kind of learning just a little glimpse of that, because now we're kind of part-time educators ourselves as parents. So
right.
thank you to all of you guys and all that you guys do.
GQ Nesto, what you got?
I gotta agree with him too. I gotta thank you guys because I can't even stand a 10-minute Zoom call. So the fact that you guys are there all day, like I respect that, and thank you, because without you, without you guys, I mean, I think our community would be pretty crappy. So,
Cousin Earl.
Man, I really appreciate this conversation. I wish it could go on a little bit longer, and even get like some of your listeners or your subscribers to kind of chime in. But yeah, I think again, like everybody reiterated, just being willing to dig in, realizing that the end goal, keeping the end goal in mind, keeping a positive outlook, I think is going to really pay off for all of us in the end. I think, things can be frustrating, and it's supposed to be. Anytime that you're learning something new, it's supposed to be frustrating, but it's so worth it because once you keep going in and day out to try to figure out a different remedy, when you master it, it feels so good. And so I'm looking forward to the opportunity for us to master this time in history.
Most def. My brother, Cam, what you got?
Wow. I guess first and foremost, I want to thank you, Drew, my brother. You know how much I love you. GQ Nesto and CEO for using your platform to bring awareness to this issue, because it is important, but it's not necessarily a provocative topic, right? I've listened to your shows. You guys have great topics, and this might not be one of the most, provocative ones, but thank you so much for using this platform to bring awareness. We have so many different perspectives on this show, parents, administrator, teacher, individuals who don't have kids, and everything begins with dialogue. And I'm very grateful that you asked me to be a part of this. I'm very humbled by it, and it was quite an experience.
All right, bro. And we thank you. And once again, I'm your boy, Drew. This is How Was Your Day podcast. What I would leave the listeners and the viewers with is I can't wait for this to be over, because what I notice is my kids eat up all my food. All right. So I'm like,
Grocery bill through the roof.
You know what I'm saying? Like, for real. Like how many times do you need to eat a day? You know what I'm saying? Like my grocery bill is out the roof. All right. But on a serious tip though, like, look, when you hit the bottom and where you feel like you're at the bottom, you can only go up. And that's a mental mindset. That's a mind state that you have to have. You can do it. I can do it. We've done it. All right. Ain't nothing that you can't overcome as long as you have the positive mind, a positive outset, and of course the influence around you. You got to have that team, as we all mentioned earlier. This is my team. We are How Was Your Day podcast. I'm your boy, Drew. We out. We thank you. We love you. Peace.
Peace.